Why do we celebrate Halloween? Well, I guess, why not? But how did it all start? And how did we get it down to just costumes and candy? I'm Larry Fedorik, and this is Later That Same Life. On this weekly podcast, topics, discussions, stories from our lives.
Season 10, Chapter 11.
Halloween.
In researching Halloween, two things jumped out at me right off the top. Or should I say, right off the bat. See what I did there? Number one, Halloween is celebrated mostly in English-speaking countries, and has only recently began to spread into non-English-speaking nations. And two, studying the history of Halloween has only been taking place in earnest for the last 30 to 40 years. Part of the issue in studying Halloween's origins is that a lot of the stories come from folk history. Folk history as opposed to intellectual historical accounts. Folk history involves legends and tales passed down through time, often verbally. And we all know how details of a story can change in the retelling. Why do we observe, celebrate, or otherwise recognize Halloween and in the manner that we do? We, humans, tend to mark a lot of special days on a calendar, perhaps as a way to relieve the boredom and drudgery of our everyday lives. Something to look forward to. Other than personal birthdays and anniversaries, well, hold on, a birthday is actually just an anniversary, and we do like to mark those anniversaries: birth, marriage, the day you met, the day you started a new job, the day you moved into your house. And we celebrate all these anniversaries on different levels based on their importance to our lives. And of course, you not only have to celebrate your own anniversaries, you have to celebrate those of the people close to you. Your birthday is a celebration, your friend's birthday, a burden. So other than birthdays and anniversaries, a lot of our observances are based on our religion. Not all are legal holidays in North America, but Jewish people have about 8 major holidays, Hindus around 6, Muslims at least 3, Christians have the big 2, Christmas and Easter, based on Jesus, and bunny rabbits and eggs. And I don't count St. Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day as Christian holidays per se. Add to all those, we celebrate the New Year, plus Victoria Day, Memorial Day, the nation's birthday, Labor Day, Remembrance Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, and a couple of totally made-up holidays in February and August just so that we can get a long weekend. All in all, about a month's worth of special days per year. And of course, we all like to celebrate, or at least acknowledge, Chinese New Year by ordering the buffet special from Mandarin. And then there's Halloween. There are usually 2 schools of thought on the origins of Halloween. A, it's Catholic, an All Hallowed Eve just before All Saints' Day, November 1st. And B, a pagan ritual from Celtic times. Both are correct, based again on folk history. Here's how it goes. The date, October 31st, and the darker nature of Halloween can, in fact, be traced back a couple of thousand years to the Celtics. Today, when we say Celtic, we think mainly of Ireland and Scotland. But back then, the Celtic nation included almost all settled lands north of the Roman Empire. The Celtics also had a tribe of spiritual and political advisors. They were known as Druids. Druids not only advised Celtic royalty, but generally they were in charge of dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Druids and Celts were pagans. They believed in many deities. They believed in an afterlife, which they called the Land of Summer. In Celtic, it was known as Samhain. Now, it is spelled Samhain, but it's pronounced Samhain. They also had a circular calendar and designated midnight October 31st as the end of seasonal summer, at which time a portal also opened to the Land of Summer afterlife. On that evening, there would be a mix of mortals with spirits, both good and evil, jumping in and out of either world. The mortals often donned disguises so as not to be tricked by the spirits. Sometimes the mortals tricked each other and blamed the spirits. A large bonfire raged to ward off the evildoers. Some of the Celts even created lanterns out of hollowed-out gourds. Perhaps the first man to do so was named Jacko. I don't know. History isn't exactly clear on that one. At the same time, on this evening, there was celebration, for it was also harvest time. Food and drink aplenty. The royal rulers required the common folk to travel to the fire, pay their share of the annual tax, and they used the night to take a census. Young people often looked for a suitable mate. It was quite the single scene, apparently, and sometimes there would be music and sports. You get the picture. Even if you took all the deities and the afterlife and the evil spirits out of the equation, it was still a must-attend, can't-miss party of the year. And this went on for centuries. Eventually, the Keltoi, as Caesar might call the Celts, were defeated by the Romans and the Slavs and the Huns. Hi, Hun, I'm home. And around that time, July and August were added to the calendar. That was in honor of Julius and Augustus Caesar. That's why to this day, Sept, 7, is actually the 9th month. Oct, 8, Nov, 9, Deca, 10. All of these are off by 2 because of the massive egos of the Caesar boys. Shortly after the defeat of the Celts, there was a rise of Catholicism in Northern Europe. This didn't happen overnight. We're talking approximately the years 300 to 600. Catholics, under powerful popes, had a policy in the day where when they took over a region, they didn't just destroy all the pagan buildings, symbols, or traditions. Rather, they just took them and made them, well, more Catholic. For example, if they came across a pagan structure, they didn't burn it to the ground. They simply removed all the pagan symbols and put up a cross and an altar. Bang! We got a church. See you Sunday. Bring cash. It was the same with this pagan ritual of October 31st. Catholics said, okay, instead of warding off evil spirits from the afterlife, why don't we have an All Saints' Day, November 1st, and then an All Souls' Day on November 2nd, and we'll make October 31st an All Hallowed Eve. Pope Gregory rubber-stamped that new calendar, which we still use today, and said our Catholic non-pagan goal will be to honor all of the saints and pray for all the souls that are trapped in purgatory. By the way, purgatory is an interesting Catholic concept. I grew up with it. You got your heaven, eternal peace and happiness, your hell, eternal suffering, and your purgatory, which was neither heaven nor hell, but a nothingness, a void, a vacuum, kind of like a George Clooney film. By my understanding of purgatory, you went there in the afterlife if you weren't quite good enough for heaven, but not really bad enough for hell. If you went to purgatory and you were still a dick, you could get demoted to hell, but also, if you went there and you were good, and you earned enough air miles or aeroplan points or something, you could eventually get out and be moved up to heaven. Part of that, though, required a lot of people back on earth praying for you. So Catholics said, let's have a day for that, All Souls Day. It'll come after All Saints Day and be preceded by All Hallowed Eve. It was over those years that the Celtic culture was relegated mostly to Ireland and Scotland. St. Patrick, though not actually Irish, became the patron saint, and he was kind of a middleman between Catholicism and Celtic tradition. All Hallowed Eve was supposed to be the start of prayer, but damn, that bonfire night was fun too. We'd wear costumes, we'd celebrate the harvest, maybe meet someone for a date, knock back a few beverages. That was hard to give up. In those times, children began to do something called souling. Souling was the practice of going door to door and begging for alms, treats, anything a household could afford to give the less fortunate. Help out these little imps and tykes. Sounds very trick-or-treat, doesn't it? But this practice of souling was supposed to be for every religious holiday. Every religious holiday asked that you try and help the poor and the needy. Give what you can. And kids were the best ones to go house to house. I mean, chances are you'd give something to a wide-eyed child as opposed to an unshaven, crusty serf. So to recap, there was Samhain, the land of summer, the Celtic October 31st Eve of disguises, spirits, and celebration. It was Catholicized to an extent, kids door to door, and this became a tradition that lasted hundreds and hundreds of years in Ireland, Scotland, some of England. Let's add a couple of things here to the development of Halloween as we know it. First, a group of mostly English pissed-off Protestants decided to cross the sea and form a new England. As they colonized the New World, pasted together a constitution, and started a harvest festival known as Thanksgiving, they rejected most things Catholic, including an All Hallowed Eve. But early in their American history, back in Ireland, there was a potato famine, and suddenly America saw a huge influx of Irish Catholics trying to get to a better place. And they brought with them this Celtic observance. Yes, it was a mix of holy prayer, but a great bonfire party. Secondly, right around this time, back home in the old country, there was the rise of Victorian-era dark horror literature. Mary Shelley had written and published Frankenstein. Bram Stoker, an Irishman, a few years later penned Dracula. These dark stories of evil among us were then easily associated with that dark night, the Celtic Halloween. This dark literature was also brought to America and became very popular. I'm skipping ahead here quite quickly for the sake of expediency, but from those days, the mid-1800s, to say the 1960s, we saw the massive expansion of the industrial age, the invention of cinema and then mass media, the birth of the suburbs, disposable income, increased consumerism, and we took those little traditions of costumes, souling, and celebration to what it is now, this high retail holiday known as Halloween. The little devils, the Draculas, the ghosts, the goblins, proudly carrying on a pagan Catholic, mostly pagan, tradition, and loving it. For kids, it's the greatest night of the year. I mean, kids would dress up, pretend, and eat candy 24/7, if they were allowed. And on this one night, they are. As kids, we loved it so much that as adults, we insist our kids have the same experience. And we also organize and attend adult costume parties with food and drink aplenty. There's a lot of things you may have to give up because you're not a kid anymore, but Halloween is not going to be one of them. It's a retail holiday. That's how the Western world works. If we can take any little day, observance, celebration, and commercialize it, we'll do it. In North America, Halloween is a $12 billion annual industry. It's retail. I can mark the passage of time by the end aisle display at my supermarket or by the first half of aisle 1 of my pharmacy. If I walk in and it's all Halloween candy, I know that it must be August. If it's all Christmas stuff, I know that it must be Halloween. You know, retail has to stay ahead of the curve. As a kid, I too loved Halloween. With my mom's help, I won Best Costume at the school 3 years in a row. Of course, you can't do that today. There's no best. Everyone is good. You're all winners. And also my childhood and Halloween history involves growing up in Saskatchewan. By trick-or-treat night, we often already had 3 feet of snow. Didn't matter what you were for Halloween. Say, what are you dressed up as, little boy? I'm a spaceman in a parka. I'm a vampire in a parka. I'm Superman in a parka. As a parent, I did my Halloween duty, made sure my kids had costumes, took them out trick-or-treating. I even decorated the yard a little bit. I was never that ridiculous dad who overdid the entire property. There's at least one in every neighborhood. One year I was at a Home Depot and I saw this 15-foot-long, 8-foot-high, complete skeleton of a T-Rex. It was for Halloween for the front yard. $400. That year I just bought some orange garbage bags that had a jack-o'-lantern face on them, and I filled them full of leaves. You know, with costumes, decorations, and the candy you buy to hand out, compared to what your kids bring home, you never break even. After all that, as an adult, I never really embraced Halloween again. For years, I would mark Halloween by driving home from work at 3 miles an hour, just in case kids would be dashing out onto the street. These days in my building, the super takes care of all the trick-or-treating in the lobby, so I don't even have kids coming to the door. I'm fine with that. It must be tough to be a parent these days. What can you dress your kid as? When we were young, as guys, our favorite costume was hobo. Oh, no, sorry, you can't be that today, because you're making fun of the homeless. The inadequately housed. Say, what are you dressed up as, little boy? Yes, ma'am, though it's true I look like a hobo, I am actually trying to bring attention to the plight of those forced to live on the street. Now, give me some candy. Can't do hobo. Can't do princess. That's forcing a small girl into an outdated feminine stereotype. Can't be a superhero or a Little Mermaid or Harry Potter, because now you're just kowtowing to a Hollywood retail money machine. Skeleton, ghost, Dracula, devil, too scary, might be age inappropriate. Police officer, too divisive. Can't be anything racially insensitive. When I was a kid, my friends who had lazy moms who just gave them a sheet for Halloween. They were either Arabs, ghosts, or maybe a Roman in a toga. I guess you could be a witch, but I keep hearing there's a lot of witch hunts out there, so that can't be safe.
It's a collusion witch hunt.
I'll bet more kids will go out this year as Barbie than they will Oppenheimer. Nowadays, sometimes schools don't even have Halloween parties. It's Orange and Black Day. Well, even then, you don't have to actually wear orange or black. You're all winners. Oh, and some years ago, people started a teal pumpkin movement. If you display a teal pumpkin in your house, you are handing out treats like little toys and things, so that kids who have food allergies can still trick-or-treat safely. Some neighborhoods just have a daytime block party in case certain kids are triggered by flashing lights or scary images. Some parents are encouraged to put trick-or-treat tables out at the sidewalk instead of up at the door to help the kids who have accessibility issues. Hey, I think this is all good. I just want everyone to be safe and happy. But if it were up to me, Halloween would always be the last Saturday in October. Doesn't that just make a whole lot more sense? I don't mean to insult the Celts, but what is the sanctity of October 31st these days? I had a career in radio. I also noticed over the years that we had a real lack of decent Halloween music. For years, all we had was Monster Mash by Bobby Boris Pickett. Of course, in 1982, Michael Jackson came out with Thriller. But where are we these days on Michael Jackson? Is he canceled? Not canceled? I have no idea. Interesting, though, that he may have saved his career by dying. I mean, if he was still alive, he might be canceled. But as a dead pedophile, that almost fits right in with this whole scary monster Halloween theme. Yeah, you don't have those easy rock stations going all Halloween music for the month of October, do you? Monster Mash, Thriller, Superstition, Werewolves of London, and then anything by the Zombies or the Smashing Pumpkins. It's really not much of a playlist. No shortage of scary movies, though, is there? They usually play wall-to-wall during the month of October. Anyway, there you have it. Halloween, a little Celtic, a little Catholic, and mostly retail. A bunch of kids pretending to be something they're not, hitting the streets expecting to be rewarded. And how does that set you up for adulthood? Perfectly.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.